Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Twin Peaks The Return, Episode 6. Full spoilers for the episode, of course, as always. And here we are, once again, and you know what, more and more, I'm feeling like this is an 18-hour movie that is just... Obviously, we can't watch an 18-hour movie in one chunk, although I'd give it a bloody good try.
And I bet Lynch wishes we could.
It probably does, but it was just the way this started off with the same music from the end of the last episode. We started with, Cooper with the statue in the same spot. I was like, this really does just flow.
Yeah, and I feel like we talked a lot during the original two seasons of how there was often episodes that didn't really have any episodic arc. They were just part of the story. This entire show of the return kind of feels that way.
It does, but not in a bad way though. It feels
No,
much.
no, no. It feels it's got a continuity to it.
Yeah, I think it jarred a little bit whenever it happened like that in the first couple of seasons because it was kind of contradicting some of the more TV, general TV elements that they were making them use because it was a TV show on network. So. Whereas here it is completely unfiltered. It's what it is, and it knows what it is, and it is working with it. So let's get into it. So yeah, as I said, Cooper's still standing at the statue. I think the only notable thing here is the guard comes up to him again, and this time he's really fascinated with his badge. He's recognising the badge. Much of what he said last time, he was recognising things like case files, the word agent. Here he's like, oh, badge, oh, shiny.
Yep.
Basically that's it. But yeah, so the security guard ends up taking him home. And remember last week we said, oh, did Jenny E not remember that he didn't have a car? And sure enough, as soon as she says, oh, Dougie, I'm sorry, I forgot, you didn't have your car. Now, admittedly, most people would expect, a man of Dougie's age to maybe able to find his way home. Get a bus, maybe a cab, walk, whatever.
That would be a fair expectation.
Yeah, admittedly, she did see how out of it he was in the morning, so maybe she should have thought better. But
Yeah.
I can't complain too much. So there's a mysterious envelope. It feels like she assumes that because when the guard hands it to her, he's like, "Oh, there's a thing down here for you." It's like she assumes it's just part of Dougie's
Like
case
he's dropped
files.
it.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like. At least what she thought at the time. But she gets some sandwich, and they basically just talk about owing money and whatever. And she's like, "Oh, you better go up and say goodnight to Sonny Jim. Go up and be with him."
Yeah.
And there's a funny little bit where he walks past the stairs and she has to shout Dougie. There's a lot of yelling Dougie at him coming from Jamie.
There is, yeah. It's like up the stairs, and then he just kind of stands at the bottom of the stairs for a while, and then he goes up one step at a time, like both feet onto one step.
Yeah. Here's what I was really noticing actually. When you seen Sonny Jim, maybe I'm paying for too close details here, but his bed, his covers. Did you notice the design on them?
I did not, but I hazard a guess as to where you're going with this.
Where do you think I'm going?
Are they zigzags?
No, not zigzags.
Okay.
Stars.
Ah, okay.
Then obviously we had him falling through space and all that
Yeah.
when he got out the main part of the lodge. Don't know if there's anything to say about that. His son is literally lying in a bed of stars.
Yeah. Could go either way, because it's not like it's something that you'd see that would be strange for a child's
Oh no,
bed.
of course not. No, but given what Lynch is like, I expect it to be an intentional. Even if it doesn't really mean anything.
Just as a almost a reminder.
Yeah. So I see that. So they have a nice little moment. He tries to pass off the crisp chip for. Audiences who are not familiar with the word crisp. But I read into this because the kid's got a clapper. He's like, claps on and off. And he's like, oh, will you stay with me till I go to sleep, Dad? And he claps and light goes off. And of course, Cooper's very enthralled by this and he claps it back on. And then he claps it off and then he claps it on. And then what I thought was interesting, because we cut down to Janie E for a bit. And we'll talk about where that leads in a minute. But it comes back up and I noticed the light had switched. Like before it cut to her, the kid was clapping it off and Cooper was clapping it on. When it came back to them, it switched. The kid
Are you
was
sure?
It had, yeah. The kid was clapping it on. Cooper was clapping it off the second
See,
time.
I had assumed, maybe I'm just misremembering. I assumed he was always clapping it. Cooper was always clapping it off because the whole point was the kid wanted the light on. He was like, "Oh, can I sleep with the light on?"
Yeah, that's what he was doing at first. Did I not say that?
Yeah, so the kid clapped it on, and then Cooper claps it off.
Oh, yeah, it switched when they came back though. I remember it switching.
Right. Okay.
Right, I got it the wrong way around, but yeah, yeah. The kid claps it on because he wants it on, and Cooper claps it off. But when it comes back, it had flipped. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it's almost like the kids try to make him see the light, just in a sort of thematic way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like he's sort of saying no, he's not ready to see the light yet. But when it came back, I'm sure it switched. I'm going to go back. I've watched it twice, but you're making me doubt myself now. But I could have sworn it switched. But yeah, the other small thing here, which is less likely, but I was just sort of thinking the reason why Cooper was so enthralled by it is because it was like a slow version of the strobe light that we associate with people coming from the Red Lodge. It's not quite a strobe, obviously, but the idea that it's going on and off, it's
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
kind of getting there.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but that works.
Yeah. But Janie E gets very upset. She sits down Dougie, and I'm like, oh dear, what's she seen in that envelope? Because that's what we see when it cuts to her. She's opening the envelope.
Yeah.
And he goes down, and it's a picture of Dougie with Jade. And Ginny, who is this? Oh, she's I told you to pay them, and they've sent us this. He's like, oh, Jade. He just remembers the name, and he says,
drops himself right in the shit.
Yeah, he just says Jade. It's like, oh, is that her name? And then he says, Jade gave 2 rides. Oh, I bet she did. Oh man, I know some people are frustrated with this Dougie stuff and really want us to get back to Cooper Remember, and I am looking forward to that. But I'm loving this.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's like I want to get back to Cooper. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be great. But man, I'm having fun with this at the same time.
Oh no, Janie gave 2 rides. That made me laugh, especially Janie E's. I bet she did. But she says a couple of other things about, oh, we need to sort this out, and then Cooper just says. It's just because she says Jade again, and then Cooper just goes Jade, and he smiles after he says her name, and that made me lose it because it was like he doesn't even care she's upset, and we know why he doesn't care, but that's what from her perspective it's like he doesn't even care she's upset. He's just smiling because he's thinking about Jade. It broke me.
Yeah,
it broke me.
And then the phone rings.
And then the phone rings. Janie E answers it, and it is the people wanting, and it is gambling. I think that was one of the first things you guessed when it came up. We also theorised lots of things about how it was connected to maybe some of the hitmen. Was one of those things related to that? Turns out it doesn't seem to be. Seems to be completely separate.
Does seem to be, yeah.
Whereas the hitman, I think, is more to do with Doppelkoop and the actual Twin Peaks plot. This seems to be
inclined to agree with that now.
Yeah. Whereas this is more. Just a random Dougie. Well, this is what Dougie was doing with his life beforehand. But Jenny E says, like, no, he's not going to speak to you. He's indisposed. I'm going to speak to you. I'm fine. She basically takes command of the situation.
My favourite bit is where she does the shush, fingers to the lips, and he just puts his up to her lips as well.
And then she gets annoyed and slaps him away.
Yeah.
God. It's good stuff. But she basically makes a meeting. She's like, oh, no, you do not go to his office. And for the same reason, a little bit later, she says, you better get started in that work. The last time we need you is you losing your job.
Yeah.
And you can tell that she's taking command. She's going to take care of it. What I thought was interesting, she said, oh, I'll meet you at this, that corner of this park, corner here. I'll be the one with the red purse.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Just another little thing on this phone call I thought was really strange. She said, I'll meet you at 12:30 tomorrow. 12:30? Is that something some people say? I've never heard it said like that.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it really stood out to me. I've never heard, at noon, fine, but 12:30 seems... She said 12:30 after to Dougie. But
yeah, because I was just about to say, I remember her saying 12:30, but she said
that
both
to
ways,
Dougie, but she said 12:30 on the phone. And I don't know if this is just something I've never heard before and it's just completely normal, but it really stuck out to me as weird.
I mean, I've never heard it, but I also never even... I never noticed it. I just kind of rolled through
Yeah.
Because I know exactly what it means. Like, there's no...
that's the thing. I get what it means, but I've never heard anyone say it like that before.
Interesting. Is it just Lynch being Lynch? Is he throwing in a weird combination of words that you never do?
It could be. That's the thing. The problem is I don't know if it's just something that people use. I don't know, and if it's just him being strange.
Here's a question: have you ever heard the word unmitigated without the word disaster after it?
No, probably not. As soon as you said unmitigated, my mind goes disaster. It's the only, it's word association. That is the only winning answer.
Have you ever heard someone say this was an unmitigated success? No, you've not.
No,
You've
but
not.
someone should say that.
Yeah, to make it a trend. You can't just have words married to other words like that. They should be
No,
free.
they should.
So that was that scene. We got a brief scene of some traffic lights. And started green, amber, ended on red. Of course, big thematic thing.
Yeah.
Which obviously leads to ideas of Twin Peaks plot and the lodge and all the rest of it. Also, the sound design in this scene, it was very much the electrical static that we
Yeah, that
associate.
hum.
Yeah, that we associated with when Cooper was coming out, and the idea that there was traveling going through the, and it went from this to the lodge. Actually, it went to the one armed man. And what I thought was interesting is he was doing the same thing that he did the last time he sort of appeared to Cooper, and he was sort of like he had his one arm up, sort of. It was like he was looking, he was trying to find him so he can communicate, kind of idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But he appears, and I wonder if even it's now I'm not sure about this because given a later scene and there's power lines then as well, so I may have a second theory in this. But at least if these power lines here are just related to the one armed man, I wonder if he's using the lines to communicate, like he's actually using them to go
Could
through.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he appears to Gage. He's sitting there before he starts working on the files, and he says, "You have to wake up." And then he repeats the phrase "Don't die" a few times.
Yeah.
And I actually thought by the end of the episode he might wake up, and become Cooper, because I thought, all right, they're clearly the fact that the one-armed man's clearly saying to him, "Look, you're not awake. You need to wake up." That says to me unequivocally this is not going to go on all season and get to the end. It's not going to be last episode finally the Cooper's back just for the ending.
Yeah.
To the point where I almost thought it was going to be this episode, because if you think of this as one big movie, this is 6 of 18, so this is 1/3. This is the end of Act 1 roughly.
Yeah, give or take. I think it's interesting. He kept saying "Don't die," and I think it's like he'll have to have a near-death experience so that he wakes up.
Oh, I didn't read that. I'll get back to what I think that means in a later scene because it's relevant to later. But I read that as a little bit differently. But no, so that was that. But then Cooper starts working on his case files, and I love that this Winset music is become the Cooper Doogie theme.
Yeah,
because it comes back in the little saxophone and the backing track comes in as he's looking at the files. And what's really funny about this scene is this is one of those scenes where it makes no sense. Like, there's nothing about it that actually says anything to us. He's just working on files. There's little green lights on the files guiding him, kind of like with a big green light on Tom Sizemore's face last episode. And the idea is that there's something guiding him. Whether it's like the lodge guiding him at, say, the casino, or whether it's like a separate thing where the green lights just indicate his own instinct.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to think that's just intuition. The green,
Right, okay.
or this one's it's less green. It's more even just a white light almost. But I think the red is clearly the lodge.
Yeah.
Whereas this one seems to be that's him.
And at first I think, he's going to be a genius here and actually just fill these out. And then he starts drawing ladders and stairs on every page. He did a couple of marks and he circles a couple of things in it as well. But the main thing he's doing in each page is he's drawing a ladder and stairs.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting the combination of ladders and stairs. Like the first one is a ladder and then stairs next to it.
Yeah,
and then the next one, the stairs are above the ladder.
Yeah, and there was a few combinations. I can't remember the exact order of them, but yeah, every page it was like a different sequence of them, almost as if it was saying something. And I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure this is not how you fill out insurance forms.
Yeah, it just looks like nonsense.
Yeah, it does. That said, I did sort of, even at this point, I thought to myself, I bet there's going to be still some valuable, like, he's still done something that's going to make sense to someone here, somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because we'd followed, if the intuition marker or the light hadn't been there, I'd go, no, it's just scribbling nonsense. But that there tells me, no, there is meaning to this. There is something in there. I just don't have any idea what.
Especially since I think the theme as well seems to come in when he's having a moment of understanding.
Clarity.
Maybe even if he doesn't understand what he's understanding, he somehow gets something. Again, intuition.
Yeah.
So no, and I think what's interesting is, in fact, I'll talk about this when we get to the scene that relates to it. There's a few things here that connect because they go to other scenes. But yeah, so that was the case files. But then we cut to Albert, who's in the city. He's talking to Gordon over the phone. Gordon's having a nice Bordeaux with his wife, by the sounds of it. And that's just is really simple scene. Albert goes into a bar and he says, Diane. And sure enough, Laura Dern turns around in a wig. I don't know if that's meant to be like what her hair will be all season, because in all the photo shoots she had a normal, long hair.
Right, okay.
And it's obviously a wig, so I'm wondering if it's a wig that Diane puts on when she goes out, rather than this is what she's actually meant to be.
That's very possible.
Yeah. But that was a scene. I don't think there's anything to read into.
No, I mean, it just go. All it does is answer who they were talking about before.
Yeah, I'll take a point.
They would.
I'll take a point.
No, I'll give you that one.
But no, it's exciting. Exciting to see Diane. So that's cool. So we have Diane, and then we went to a scene between Richard Horne and Red. Red's the character who we thought was Ray at the end of the second episode, if you remember. And that was the first and only. I think the only time I've seen him so far before this episode was in the Bang Bang bar at the end of episode 2. But they're making a drug deal. He seems to be like a sort of kind of a kingpin, and then Richard Horne, who was seen in the Bang Bang bar last episode, threatening sexual assault on someone. He seems to be the sort of hothead, kind of Bobby-esque character, but bit more erratic. He's certainly more like unhinged than Bobby ever was, but certainly feels
along
like
the
an
same
evolution.
lines. Yeah,
it feels like the evolution of that, and he's a young guy peddling the cocaine or whatever it is they're smuggling in. This was a very surreal scene, actually, because we had, first of all, I liked the bodyguard in the background, big guy. He's holding this ridiculous gun that's huge.
Yeah, the big rifle.
Yeah, and he just kept sort of like chuckling about what was happening, and that was really like, my eye kept going to his face in the scene, just watching him sort of react to what was going on.
He was having fun with it.
Yeah, he was enjoying young Richard Horne being basically showing who's boss, as the gist of the scene. It's basically Red, sorry, said the wrong name. It's basically Red, showing that he is the boss, showing that he has control of the situation. I've got some key quotes written down here. He says a couple of weird things, like, have you ever studied your hand? He's got this kind of erratic thing. It's almost like he's schizophrenic and he's like switching between personas mid-scene to an extent. At one point he says he's got a problem with his liver and he hits his hand, but then the real interesting stuff comes though when Richard says, don't call me kid, and then that's almost like Red feels prompted to show, no, I will call you kid because I'm in charge. And he does this trick with the coin. He gets a coin out and he tosses it into the air, and then it seems to just spin in the air.
Yeah, it just stays. At first I thought I was just doing a slow motion thing. Because, sometimes you go up, you watch it spin, and then you linger on that. But then it cut back down to the faces, and then cut back up to the coin. I was like, oh, that was real time.
Yeah. And then the trick is that, and by the way, the sound of a coin in someone's mouth, especially with Lynch turning up the Foley and stuff, is disgusting. Like, just as he was realizing the coin was in his mouth, Richard, that is, he pulls it out, and then the coin drops into Red's hand, and then Richard looks back down at his hand and it's missing.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "This is you," and he's like, "It's the tails," and he flips it over onto his hand. He's like, "And this is me," and it's like, "I'm the head, you're the tail." And then obviously the whole thing that he got the coin in his mouth and then back again without him even realizing, it's like, "No, I'm running circles around you. That you have nothing on me."
Some magic coin voodoo going on there.
Yeah. I don't really have much to read into this scene other than it's just Red's an intense, like, we saw Richard was intense last episode, but Red's arguably more intense, but he certainly acts like more of a civilized person in public, at least from the small scene we got of in the Bang Bang bar, where he just kind of nodded towards Shelley. Although if Shelley's actually attracted to him, she's got a really bad history of attracting assholes.
She does. She does.
She used to pick better. She's like criticising her daughter for, oh, this little sort of prepubescent moustache ginger asshole is not good enough for you, but she's...
I mean, it runs in the family, doesn't it? We saw her mother.
But she's somehow attracted to her third cocaine dealer.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting it was called Red, given that, we've been talking about the colour red as a big theme.
I think that is important, I agree. I don't really know if I've got anything to say about it yet, but...
No, but we've been talking about how Red kind of points the direction from the lodge, so maybe it's he's pointing the direction that Cooper will have to follow once he's in town.
There's a dog outside barking in the distance. I don't know how audible it is over the mic, but...
I don't believe it is.
Oh, good. That's nice. So then we went to a trailer park, and Carl, played by Harry Dean Stanton from Fire Walk With Me, appeared. These couple of scenes confused me at first, because I assumed he was still in Portland, Oregon, I believe, was the location that he was in the film. But it turns out he's actually quite close to Twin Peaks, if not in Twin Peaks itself, given...
Yeah, I got that just from because this had the big shot of all the logs, didn't it?
Well, that was before the Red Richard scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Which, by the way, that felt oddly nostalgic, just seeing the logs, to be honest, because we hadn't seen them yet.
I thought it was really interesting. It seems like there's a lot more logs than we saw before.
More of an industry, maybe, now. More of a...
Yeah, it's moved on.
Less of a family business, more of a big company kind of thing, maybe. But yeah, so it was just because it seems like he lives just outside of Twin Peaks, because he mentions that he comes to town every day. So his idea is that maybe Twin Peaks is the closest actual town that he can go to get supplies and things like that. But he's still running a trailer park. But here's the real interesting thing. Guy comes up, I actually didn't catch the guy's name, who comes up and asks if he can get a ride into town. But he seems to be... I mean, I'm assuming married, but I mean, it could be his sister, I suppose. But he lives with Linda.
Yes.
Now remember the Giant, episode 1. Remember Richard and Linda.
We have now got one of each.
Yes.
For now.
Yeah, because he wants to go to town because he has to check Linda's PO box. Was the reason. Yeah. And he mentioned that they just got a nice fancy wheelchair for her, but he complains about the government not, like, you know, it took 6 months to get the wheelchair. They're really having to like struggle to get any help, that kind of thing. And then there's a little bit about quitting smoking, which, to be honest, I feel like that's just Lynch having a dig at people who don't like smoking, because I know Lynch is a chain smoker, basically. So, but the guy's like, oh no, I quit. I want to, but then I quit. And then Harry Dean Stanton's like, nah, I've been smoking for 70 years, every goddamn day.
Yeah, 75 years. It's even more.
He must. I mean, he's an old guy, but he must have started young if he's been smoking.
Well, that's the thing. I think typically people tend to start around, like, if you're going to start young, from my experience, it seems to be around 13 to 15.
Yeah, but that'd put him close to 90.
It would.
I mean, I know he's old, but I don't know if he's hitting 90.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, are you really like 90 odd? Because otherwise, I mean, even to be 80, you'd have had to start at 5.
Exactly. You don't start. No one starts at 5.
They just don't. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the parent would actually have to encourage you to start if you're going to start at 5.
They'd have to light it for you.
Oh dear. So that was that scene, and obviously there's some Linda intrigue here, but I think the main purpose here, because this is actually probably the most orchestrated I feel like any of the show's been so far, where this scene and the Red Richard scene are kind of coming together. Like, these start intercutting between each other, along with the next scene that I'm about to talk about. They all intercut because they all lead to the same sort of moment. And the next scene I'm talking about is the double R. Heidi, who's in the original show, with her ridiculous laugh.
Oh, I hate that laugh. It's so annoying. I just want to... just shove some cherry pie down her throat. Shut her up.
Do you know what? I don't mind the laugh so much. I mean, it's not a good laugh, but what bothers me about it is that almost anything triggers it.
Yeah, that's the problem. I wouldn't mind it if it was just once, but it's when it's so much of this stupid, annoying laugh.
It's really constant, and I got the name. Hold on, Miriam. Yeah, Miriam's just talking about how she came in. It's like, oh, I bet they've got a piece of cherry pie with that name on it, and sure enough, they do. And I'm like, that wasn't that funny.
Yeah, I know.
Stop it. But she leaves a nice tip for the waitresses, her and Shelley, of course. Shelley's kicking around, and they're like, "Oh, she's quite nice." And they mention she works at a school, because she mentions taking a bit of some coffee for one of the mums, and she mentions that the kids are lovely this year. So she's either a teacher or maybe she's got like a sort of office job at the school kind of thing. Yeah. But it sets up that she's a very delightful person. Maybe a little bit annoying, but harmless and delightful, cheery.
Yeah, and they talk about how she's obviously quite a nice person as well. Like, they talk about how she can't really afford to leave a tip like that.
Oh,
that's right. She's done it anyway.
Yeah. So again, this is all building to the next thing, but that's there and that's set up. And again, it's nice to start to just drop into like a place like the Double R Diner now, because we were up for the first time last episode. Now we can just drop in there and see
we don't have to wait for it now. We can just have things there.
Yeah. So that's cool. But yeah, so Richard, there was actually like a brief shot between a couple of these scenes before now with Richard being pissed off in his truck. Like he's pissed off. He took some of the cocaine at the meet, so he's out his head, and he's angry. He's pissed. He's pissed that he feels small because of Red.
Keeps repeating like, "Don't call me kid."
Yeah, and then we see Carl in the park, and he's an old man in the park, enjoying the nice day. And he notices a mum with a little kid, and they're playing a little game where the kid sort of runs ahead, and the mum chases up after him, and then he runs ahead, mum chases up after him, and I'm like, oh, this is all going somewhere bad.
Yeah. It's when it's cut in between, him in the car and then this. I'm like, this can't end well.
I want to point out, it's not even a car; it's a big goddamn truck.
It's a big truck, yeah.
Yeah, like the front of the truck is like taller than like the hood's like 5 foot up or something like that.
Yeah. It's a big truck.
It's a big truck. And it gets to the traffic lights, and again we come back to so this is where I think the traffic lights from earlier, I think it also foreshadows this, and if it's not just foreshadowing, I'll see what happens. So there's the point here is that Richard goes on the wrong side of the road. He's pissed that there's a car in front of him at the lights waiting. He's like, oh, screw this, and he's going to go down the wrong side, which I think anyone. It's clearly his fault, obviously, because he's driving on the wrong side of the road. The road rules are not just there for other cars.
It's also a pedestrian crossing, so
exactly, yeah.
Like they're in the right to cross there, and the cars should stop.
Yeah, I mean, even without the crossing, though, I think you could argue.
Oh, even without that, yeah.
You should expect the cars to drive on the correct side of the road. I mean, you should. I mean, admittedly, be safe. Always check both sides as you're crossing. But if you're only having to go past like half of the road, you're usually pretty safe, knowing as long as they're not coming from that direction, you're good. Yeah. You should be, in theory.
And they've been waved across by the car waiting there, so in theory, anything that comes up would stop behind them.
Oh yeah, the guy in the car who waves him across either is fine. Like he's making the correct call. There, this is purely on Richard, and perhaps some divine intervention. Get to that in a minute. But yeah, so he goes down the wrong side of the road. The kid runs out, and Lynch does not pull a punch here. You see the kid get smacked with a truck.
Yeah, my notes just say kid went splat.
It's just.
Yeah. He's going pretty quick.
He is.
And you just watch it smack right into him.
And it's a hit and run. Obviously, I don't expect Richard to be the upstanding citizen and get out, but he just drives. Now this actually doesn't come right away, but I just want to mention now Miriam's side of this. The reason why that was intercut here is because Miriam sees his face. Like when he's driving away, she sees a bit further up the road at the Double R Diner. So this is why we know this is all Twin Peaks, because she just came out of the Double R Diner. So there's no doubt we're in Twin Peaks. And she sees his face as he goes past, and he sees that she sees his face. And he says, "Oh, I told him to get out of the way." Yeah. He's saying it as if, because the warning, because he says get out of the way as he's like a second away from splatting him.
I know.
But. So that it's worth mentioning that there was a piece of music a couple episodes ago with Sonny Jim that I speculated might have been new composition from the composer. I don't know if that was for sure, but I know this music here was. This was because I seen them talking about it. There was an interview. Apparently he scored this scene before they even started shooting. This was Lynch just described the scene to him, and he went for it.
Yeah.
It's incredible tracks, very haunting. Everyone reacting. You got a bunch of extras who are staring in like shock and horror. The mother's holding her kids.
It's got some of those where it's really kind of not that great acting, especially in a moment like this. But it kind of Twin Peaks kind of gets away with it because I expect a level of quirkiness. Like even in things like this, where I expect things to not feel quite right, so them not acting quite right kind of still fits the tone weirdly.
It does, and I think it gives it this weird authenticity as well in a strange way where. I think you wouldn't know how to react if you'd just seen that. You'd kind of be in shock. So you're supposed to put your hand up to your face and be like, but you're almost going through it because you're expected to do it because you're too much in shock to actually really react.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's a weird excuse for some shitty extra acting, but honestly, it kind of works in this case.
It does.
But yeah, the mother's holding her kid. She's crying out in pain. The music's blaring. It's great. Carl comes up and. Just tries to comfort, I guess. Just puts his hand on her shoulder and.
Well, I mean, this is just after he sees like the flame in the sky.
Yeah, he sees the whole thing, take place, and he doesn't maybe see the whole thing, the actual impact, but he walks up and he sees
yeah,
them.
he hears it for sure.
Yeah, and he walks up and sees them, and we get this shot of a sort of, you said flame, yeah, sort of light flame type thing. Basically the kid's essence.
Yeah. That's basically what it was.
You see it floating up from his body, and it goes past some power lines, which is very interesting. And the way I read this is why when you said earlier, or when I said earlier, I had another interpretation of the traffic lights, or in the don't die, the one-armed man's don't die. I think this kid died. Obviously, in a real world sense, it's because Richard's a coked out idiot who did what he did. But I think the kid died because the lodge is demanding lives because Cooper's out.
Okay.
I think it's on a warpath. I think the reason why one of them has to go back in is because balance is not restored, and because of that, innocent lives are being taken.
So you think they're just trying to fill the quota, like trying to get the balance by putting anyone's life in?
Another thing I noticed as well, at the end of this scene, remember how last week I said there was power lines in Fire Walk With Me, and the font on them was the same as the font in the machine? You see one of those signs again. You
do.
It's the end of this scene. It's on the power pole, and it goes up, and you hear the buzz again. You hear the static ambience.
Number 6.
Number 6, which I think is very interesting, because where's Cooper right now? Where's he working for?
Lucky 7.
He's next. Maybe I don't know.
I mean, that's just a reasonable assumption.
I know. I think him saying "don't die." I mean, yeah, he may have a near-death experience, but I don't think it's so much that he has to have one and survive. It's more that he knows that there's going to be attempts. There's going to be things that come after him. More on that in a minute. But like, there's going to be stuff, and it's don't die because because we know the one-armed man's very much not on Bob's side. He wants Bob contained. He wants him to lose. So he's begging Cooper to wake up and don't die because he needs to win. Because he's like the audience almost. He needs Cooper to win.
Yeah.
So it's a very emotional scene though. The music was fantastic. Obviously the music's a big part of that and why it's so good.
But definitely.
No, really, really good stuff. That, however, was not the most shocking scene in the episode. We'll get to that in a bit. So we cut to Vegas, and we return to Mr. Todd, who we have not seen since episode 2. If you remember, he told someone she's got the job, and now it seems very clear who that was. That seems to very clearly be the woman from last episode who called the box, the woman who was running the hitmen.
Yeah.
Because he basically what happens is, again, here's the colour red coming. He's on his computer, and a red square just appears.
Yeah, it's a little red pop-up.
And then it fades away, which is not a normal computer thing. Windows don't just fade away, but this does. It just fades away, and it's like it's telling him the current hitmen have failed. It's not worked.
Yeah.
And he opens a safe and he pulls out a file. Now that's all we see of this scene. And obviously it's once we see what's in the file that we put together that he hired that woman who is working with the hitmen. But that's that. But that's that scene. We'll leave that there. Then we cut to the house and estate at Rancho Rosa. And it's basically just the cops find the car and they make a point of finding the license plate, so they know. So they're presumably going to track down to Doogie, to Cooper, now that they know whose car it is and they've tracked that.
You assume so.
Yeah, the other point in the scene is that we do cut back to the junkie in the house, who once again starts yelling 119, which, of course, as you pointed out when it first came up, is 911 backwards.
Yeah. I literally have nothing else to go on other than that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I know. Honestly, I think it makes sense. I mean, as much as it can.
As much as anything in this show makes sense.
Yeah. So we come back to the file. We come back to the file that Mr. Todd pulled out of his safe, and it's delivered to a little guy, a dwarf. Is dwarf the correct term to use these days?
Probably not. But I don't know.
I don't know what the correct term is.
Dwarfism is an actual condition.
Yeah. See, I often say little person, but that's kind of a mouthful, and I don't know if that's meant to be the right term. So forgive me if anyone who's small like that is watching, and by all means tell me the correct term that's accepted as friendly and not offensive. By all means, I don't actually know. But he gets the file, And what I thought was interesting is it, much like Cooper Dougie has a theme song, so does Hitmen. Because we heard this song, there's a song that kicks in when he opens the
Yeah.
file, and we heard it before with the other Hitmen. And so right away the music's telling you this is what this guy is. Even if, as subtle as it is. And then he opens the file and there's two photographs in it. There's Dougie and there's the woman from last episode. So basically, Mr. Todd is like, alright, we need to kill the previous people who failed the job as well.
Yeah. Like you fail, you die.
Yeah, because you know too much or whatever. So, no, it is worth mentioning. Now, he's got a full name in the credits. I can't remember what the actual name was because I didn't care, because his nickname is what I'm going to use. Because it was first name, nickname, last name.
Yeah.
His nickname? The Spike.
It's cool.
He's the Spike.
It's a cool name.
He's the Spike.
I think he deserves that name, actually.
I think he does as well. More on him in a little bit. We go back to work, back to Lucky 7 Insurance. Cooper's back at work. A little bit with the elevator. We see him once again with the other guy. He's got the coffee. Although this time his name's on the coffee. The guy made sure to get him his coffee because he knows he was going to want it. Little thing here where he's sort of like not coming out the elevator and the elevator doors keep opening and shutting. And he's kind of smiling. I kind of read this as like he needs to come through again. This idea that he needs to come back, he needs to walk through the light, as it were. But he needs encouragement, and then when he does come through, he gets stuck. The door's shut on him because he takes too long.
I think that's where he is at the minute. He's stuck in the middle.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's all that was saying. But the boss calls him into his office. Funnily enough, he doesn't react to Jones. He says Jones like 4 times, and then he's like, "Dougie." He's like, "Oh, that's me." And then he finally comes in. Worth mentioning that Anthony, that's Tom Sizemore's character, he was very concerned. He's very worried because obviously last episode, Cooper called him a liar, and he's concerned what this meeting's about. He looked very tense about it.
Yeah, I did notice all the forms that he was working on said Anthony. I wasn't sure if that was the whoever was submitting it, but now I'd forgotten his name at the time. I'll be honest.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And do you know, I hadn't noticed the name was Anthony on the forms, but I kind of assumed it was his forms given from something else in a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, he goes into his office. The Windswept theme comes back in. That's the name of the track, by the way, in case you're wondering why I'm calling it Windswept. That's the name of the track. It's a piece of source music. And the boss is looking through the documents and he's like, "This is nonsense. How am I supposed to make sense of this?" And he just like, "Make sense of this." And it's not, to him, it's like he's telling him to just make sense of it. Like there's reason, there's rhyme and reason to this. But obviously he's just repeating stuff. And as he's looking through it, Cooper looks up at this boxing poster, which I believe the name on it's a reference to one of Cooper's first films, like one of his short films or something like that. I don't know exactly.
It's also the name of this manager. It's his poster. It's
him.
No,
I knew that. I was just before I was getting to that. Yeah,
okay.
Because you see his nameplate on the desk. Yeah. And the reason why that's important because he looks up at it and he makes a little fist. He's sort of copying the pose with he's a boxing pose. And what I read this as is he's looking because Cooper has this same moment where he looks up at the poster and he looks down at him. And that's where, if you've not noticed it's the same person, this is where it tells you because he's looking up at it and he's looking down. And I thought this was interesting. I thought this was Cooper looking at this and going, he used to be different. This is who he used to be. But now he's like this.
Yeah.
And that's how I read it. This is the idea getting into his head that maybe I used to be someone because he used to be completely different. He used to be this boxer.
Yeah. What was I like?
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting that way. And then so as this is all playing out, the boss is looking through all the files, and then he eventually slows down and he has that moment of, wait a minute, and he looks at a couple of them, and he's like, And then he says a couple of things to him. He says, he makes sense of it, basically, and he says a couple of things. "Oh, thank you so much for this. Keep this to yourself. This is very disturbing."
Yeah.
And then he says, "I may need your help again, but thank you so much." This is, he basically thanks him. And the disturbing part was basically the part that confirmed to me, this was Anthony's stuff. That whatever he's pointed out, the connections he's made with these lines have pointed out that Anthony has been frauding them. He has been doing things to steal from them or whatever.
It's definitely the lines that he's paying attention because it's the big scribbles next to the names and then the lines connecting them. The ladders and the stairs themselves seem
Irrelevant.
separate.
Yeah, they seem
Yeah.
like nonsense that he can't make sense of. But it's the line. It's almost like he's pointing out where, oh, look at in all these cases, there's like names being reused or there's other things happening. Like he's pointing out discrepancies
Yeah.
in a very sort of oblique way or vague way that he,
I think that's what it is as well. Yeah.
that he's noticing. But I thought I thought that was very interesting, and obviously Anthony's reaction when this comes about is interesting. Should be interesting, rather. But no, so that was actually the last scene of Cooper in this episode. That was his stuff. Good scenes though. I liked all his stuff again. Then we had Janie E in the park meeting with the gambling debt collectors. One of whom was played by Jeremy Davies, who I know from Lost and a couple other things. He had the mullet in this scene.
All right.
He doesn't usually have a mullet, but he had a mullet in this scene.
Why not?
But yeah, so we find out that Dougie borrowed 20 grand to gamble. The reason why it's 50, technically now 52, as they say, because the debt's still going up. He like that's what they owe. And then Naomi Watts, Janie E, just gives this great speech about how they're not that rich. They drive shitty cars. They're one of the 99%ers, as she puts it. And I felt like this was a little bit of almost just release for like Lynch to throw in some, again, a bit more like sort of criticism of like the modern society, like what's currently going on. There's a lot because the idea of the 99%ers and the 1%ers, like that's not to say that didn't exist in 1991 or whatever, but no one was calling it that. No one was using those terms.
No, it's very very relevant at the minute, isn't it?
So no, I think that's very. And then she uses her own knowledge because she works at a bank, and she talks about how interest works and what it usually is. And she's like, "I'm going to be very generous and give you 25%. So here's 25 grand, and you will take it and you will like it." Is basically the gist of it. But then to go back with the social commentary, she then chastises them for being part of the corrupt system. She says, "You should be ashamed of yourselves for being part. The world's so dark right now, and you are part of it. You're part of the problem." Dark times, she calls it. But yeah, so I thought that was very interesting. It was basically just a social commentary scene, but it was also it was good for her because it gave her more of like, because so far we've seen her nag, Cooper a lot, whereas this shows that she's just generally a strong-willed person in general.
This is definitely the first time we've seen it outside of relation to Dougie's stuff. I mean, this is it's still Dougie's debt, so it's kind of related still, but it's her scene rather than someone else's.
Jade give 2 rides. Oh, I bet she did. Oh, yeah. That scene. Then we cut the assassin theme, the hitman theme comes back in. And we see the woman who called the box, the hitman lady, and she's on the phone. She's like, "What bodies? What? There's what?" And we see the Spike walking around, just sort of like full speed ahead, not a running, just a sort of very intentioned walk. And he just comes walking right. He's got a little bit of blood on him. He's got his ice pick in his hand, and he comes in. He just runs up to her and starts stabbing her violently in the corner.
Yep, pretty much. It's pretty great.
It is fantastic. It is it's so visceral and surreal again because of who he is, the fact that he's using an ice pick, his determination, everything about it is just like this surreal David Lynch kind of death scene. And then it reminded me a lot, actually. Remember that scene in Mulholland Drive where the hitman takes someone out, but then he notices the cleaner is watching.
It was the exact same thing.
Yeah. So one of the other people working in this building witnesses the crime, and he sees her, and she tries to run, and then he just storms off again. You don't actually see this one, but you don't have to because you've just seen it.
The implications there.
It's kind of like at the start of the episode where the security guard just cuts to him like knocking on the door at the house rather than having to see him like drive and find the red door again. We've seen it. We know how that worked.
Yeah, exactly. And we get the comments still about that, but we get it.
Yeah, and the music actually stops at one point, and it's after he's killed the witness. He walks out into the hall, and his ice pick is bent. It's like it's proper bent in half.
And he looks really upset.
And he gets really upset about it. It looks like his favourite toy's just been broken, and that cracked me up. That was pretty great. The Spike might be my favourite new character.
That's fair.
He's fantastic. I love him. But yeah, so obviously, and again, much like I said, number 6, Cooper's next.
I mean, we know he's the next target.
He's got 2 contracts, and Cooper is next. So, one of them.
It's going to be interesting.
At least one of them is right, even if I'm wrong about the number.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That takes us on to quick scene with Richard. He stops somewhere remote and he cleans the blood from his front of his truck. And obviously, I don't have to point out that blood is red, but blood is red, and that's a big part of the show.
As blood tends to be.
It does tend to be, but he has to clean that off the front of his truck, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
Whilst looking kind of pissed off about everything. Then we get what. Despite the fact that I said the Spike killing spree was probably the most exciting exciting scene of the episode in terms of action, in terms of visceral kind of stuff going on, excitement. Yeah. I think the most interesting scene of the episode is the next one with Hawk.
Yeah, in terms of plot advancement.
Yeah, because Hawk's in the bathroom at the police station, and he drops his coin after he washes his hands, and it rolls into the cubicle, and right away I'm like, there's only one scene of Twin Peaks that sticks out in my head in a cubicle.
I also want to point out a coin. Obviously we saw that earlier in the episode, where
true.
The coin was acting strangely.
That is true. And then you wonder, like, if we're getting like electromagnetic things coming from the lodge, is magnetism part of that? And that's why, because coins are small enough that even weak magnets can manipulate coins, kind of thing. I wonder if that's a good point. But he picks up the coin and he notices that the head on it's a Native American.
Yeah.
And obviously we know that he's looking for something that relates to his heritage. And he turns around and he sees on the cubicle door, like the company that makes the cubicles has a Native American logo. That's just the company's thing.
There's Purse Manufacturing.
Oh, did you not down the actual thing?
Just in case.
Just in case. And he looks up at the door, and like the corner of the door is kind of it's like one of the rivets has kind of came out, and it's just kind of floppy. And he's like, And obviously he's thinking the same thing. He's putting these pieces together, and even though it's a long shot, it's Twin Peaks. He knows the log lady's usually right. So he starts to pry it off to the point where he goes and gets like a sort of crowbar thing to start properly prying it. And then before he gets to the good stuff, that prick Chad comes in with a book and a cup of coffee. Because you take coffee into the bathroom like a civilized person.
Yeah, I think you're doing Twin Peaks, to be fair.
You probably do. And he's like, does the sheriff know about this? I'm going to tell him. It's like, you do that, Chad.
Just piss off, Chad.
Chad's just... I wrote down Chad as and then a word I cannot say on this recording.
Mine's just Chad's the worst.
Yeah. The word begins with C, for the record.
I figured it might.
But no, he takes the door off, he gets his hand in, and he pulls out some paper. Specifically, perhaps, pages of something. I want to point out some key facts from the old show here, which I think is very relevant at this moment in time. There were pages missing from Laura's diary.
There were.
Fire Walk With Me. Annie told, in her dream, Annie told Laura to write about meeting Cooper in the lodge in her diary.
Yep.
Is that what's on those pages?
It could well be. The only question then is, when did they get in there?
Well, we know that one of our man was in that cubicle at some point.
Okay, that's true. Okay, bad question then in that case. If he put them there, how did he get those pages in the first place?
I feel like I need to watch Fire Walk With Me again and see when he...
Yeah, no, that's fair.
To really answer that.
Someone might be able to help us out in the comments on this one.
Yeah, if there's a time where he clearly could have gotten access to them, by all means let us know in the comments if you can think of something. But given that he clearly... Because he was trying to warn Laura in Fire Walk With Me. Like he was trying to help her. He was trying to defeat Bob. He's trying to... And we know that Hawk's looking for something. Something is missing. In this case, he's the pages, which were always missing, which is, I think, it's really cool that it's tying in... Because way back in the original show...
it's not something that's gone missing since.
Yeah, even back in the original show, that was a mystery. There's pages missing, and they never brought it up. And now it's like, pages missing.
Yeah, and it's also to do with Cooper. It's like, it's not necessarily to do with the investigation, perhaps.
Yeah.
But what is on the paper is to do with Cooper.
That is why I immediately jumped to that scene in Fire Walk With Me where Annie tells her to write. Because I think when we talked about Fire Walk With Me, we said, maybe she didn't write, maybe she forgot and she didn't write it down. But now I'm thinking, no, those missing pages.
We speculated that much like how after Cooper's first dream in the lodge, he forgot the answer that Laura told him.
Yeah, but how insane is it that the plot of this season will somehow tie in the fact that she was told something in a dream before the show in a movie that was made 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's
Some serious planning went into this.
I mean, obviously, I'm not saying they had this exactly planned at the time, but I think because those diary pages were missing, I think at least this part of it, the idea that those diary pages
I think the core idea is intact.
Yeah, the idea that the diary pages had something important on them from Laura was clearly there at the time. Maybe what was on them has changed since then, and that's fine, but
the idea of these missing pages has always been there.
And the idea that Annie tells her to write about Cooper and the... maybe that was always the idea. Maybe the idea was always that if we'd gotten a season 3 back then, they would figure out that Cooper wasn't really Cooper because they'd find these pages and the pages would say Cooper's in the lodge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. The circumstances have certainly changed based on the 25-year gap, but the idea of these pages being the key and giving them information, that seems to be a constant. And
what I love about that is that you think, coming back 25 years later, obviously a lot of stuff's going to be new, and anything they try to tie into, it was always there, sometimes can feel like just like a little retcon. And you wouldn't necessarily blame them for it, but it sometimes can. It feels like when they bring something back, and it's kind of like when a movie trilogy, in the third movie they'll say, oh no, something that happened in the first movie was actually this, and they try and change their conception.
Yeah.
This feels like, no, this was seeded. This was actually had the elements were planted in the original show, and in the Fire Walk With Me movie, so...
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then one last scene, still in the police station. Doris, Sheriff Frank Truman's wife, shows up again, and she's pissed because the car that she complained was not fixed, her dad's car, is still not working. He can't get it to run, and it's a very awkward moment. So it's in the main sort of area, the new area of the station where the big actual workroom. Yeah, the office with the other cops and stuff. And he takes her off and says, let's come to my office. And then Chad, I've actually written, you remember I said earlier on, I said Chad is and then a word I can't say? I wrote it down again in this scene.
No, yeah, I get it.
I wrote that twice because the dispatch lady is like, because Chad says something like, oh, I couldn't put up with that woman. And she's like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, do you know their son killed himself? And it's like, oh, this is some character stuff, this is interesting stuff we didn't know. And Chad's like, yeah, I heard about that. He couldn't handle being a soldier. And I'm like, are you making fun of someone who committed suicide? Are you really doing that right now?
Yeah. Do you know what? I've got a horrible feeling.
Oh, God.
Chad is going to end up a hero because we hate him so much. They're going out of their way to make us hate him, that he's got to do something amazing at some point.
I don't know. I feel like it's going to be the opposite. I think he's going to get some serious comeuppance. I think that kid going splat, I think Hitman Lady getting stabbed to death, that's going to look like nothing when we see what happens to Chad.
Oh, I hope so.
I trust in Lynch.
I thought it was really interesting. He was like, yeah, it's a free country. I can say what I want. And her face is like, well, yeah, you can, but maybe you shouldn't.
Maybe a bit more. I don't want to get into it, but there's maybe a bit touch more social commentary there with that little exchange. So we know they had a soldier, a son that was a soldier, and he's committed suicide. So maybe that'll be some important backstory that comes up later, or maybe it'll just drive some of Frank's motivations when we see him finally interact with Cooper and that kind of thing. Who's to say at this point? The last thing I noted down about this scene is Jesse, who's the other cop. He's the one who gave the 5-second pause. I think it was episode 3 or 4, whoever one that was.
Another one on the door.
When he came in the room and he just sort of made this pause and then said, "Oh, your son's outside." He did the camera panned across to him from Chad at the end of the scene, and he's
just staring up like that.
Yeah, he's just staring off into nothing as if.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting.
Strange.
Interesting. He's a cookie character.
He is.
I'm interested in more Jesse. But then again, we cut to the Bang Bang Bar and we were played out with a song. No scene this time. It wasn't a fake out. It was, no, this is genuine at the end. But this is the thing. Because last time it was a fake out, when I went to the Bang Bang Bar, I checked the time on how much was left.
Well, yeah, I went to the Bang Bang Bar and it went for quite a while before the first bit of the credits actually came up. So I was half expecting something to happen.
Yeah. So I checked the time and I was like, oh shit, it's only 3 minutes. Oh well, I guess it's all. Because I will say this, that these episodes are going in super quick. They are damn near full hour longs, and they do not feel it at all. It is going in super quick. That is a testament to how the pacing of, because the scenes are quite long, some of them, but the pacing, the way each scene itself holds your attention is very, very strong.
Definitely.
So no, I like this episode.
Yeah, it was good.
I don't know if it's my favorite yet, but it feels the strongest in having all of the elements together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I get what you're saying.
Like,
It's because it had things like all the scenes intercutting and leading to something. It felt like it was a cohesive story in this episode rather than just all these disparate overall threads.
Kinda. But I'm loving where it's going. I genuinely think the journey to like Cooper being Cooper, I think that could be another episode or two, maybe exactly halfway at the episode 8 mark. But I feel like because the One-Armed Man actually brought it up and said you need to wake up, I feel like because that almost made me think that it might be back by the end of the episode, because it felt like it was triggering the start of the process of no, this is when he really starts to, because someone's telling him he needs to wake up.
Yeah, I get you.
And I feel like next episode we'll probably see the key arrive, maybe at the Great Northern.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, makes sense. And get back to Doppelkoop.
And get back to Doppelkoop. Cow jumped over the moon. But no, there you go. That is Twin Peaks. That might be the shortest review we've done yet. I don't know if that means we had less interesting things to say, or if maybe the show just had less things to talk about, or maybe we have just learned to cut out some fluff. I don't know. But here we are. So that is Twin Peaks Part 6 of The Return. It's my favourite thing on TV right now, so I am exceedingly looking forward to next week's episode. So, no, let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Individual Twitters on the screen. If you want to support us, you can head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. Check out some of the bonuses over there if you want to sort of keep the lights on, that kind of thing. But that is us, so thank you very much once again for watching. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?